Divorced Redditors. What is the craziest thing you or your former spouse did after divorce? My ex stole a car and did 18 months in state prison. Based on what I was able to find online at the time. He approached a car dealership and showed interest in buying a vehicle. They allowed him to take it home for a 24-hour demo. He never returned it. They reported it stolen after they attempted multiple times to contact him to return it. They then contacted the state police who put a barlow out. They found him driving the vehicle on the other side of the state where he thought he wouldn't be found. I found out when I got an unexpected phone call from the sheriff's office. I asked why they were calling me about this. They said I told them I would vouch for him as a character witness. I told the officer over the phone that my ex was a lying sack of shit and shouldn't be trusted. The officer laughed, thanked me for my time and hung up. Completely ignored our 3 children for the last 10 years while living with a woman and her 3 children. Did I mention? Our oldest is from a previous relationship who I was awarded custody of, and he is her only living biological parent. Mom's friend was getting divorced. Wife was staying in the house, but left so the husband could gather his things without her there. As he moved out, while packing, he gave the dog a laxative and locked her in the master bedroom. Poor girl had explosive malamute diarrhea everywhere. She was so upset about her accidents that she tried to dig through the door. That dog was such a good girl. It broke my heart. Luckily, the wife kept the dog and the husband was convicted of animal abuse charges, which helped the wife keep custody of the kids. My mom went out and got braces put on my teeth that I didn't really need, knowing my dad would have to pay half for them and wanting to cause him financial heartache. She then proceeded to not take me to the ortho for the routine care because he wasn't paying his half, and I ended up having to pull the braces off my own teeth at age 14 because they were falling off on their own. Ended up rotting several of my adult molars too. It's cost me thousands of dollars and serious self-conscious issues over my smile lack of teeth as an adult. Here's a more wholesome and true one. He had Sunday dinners with my mom for many years after our divorce. He never had a real mom, long story, so I didn't mind sharing mine, as long as I didn't have to be there. Laundry list, but my favorite was his sister sent a Facebook message to all of his contacts the day of our separation, including my family. Before we announced anything, her message stated everyone should immediately delete me, and if I said anything about why we separated I was lying, and not to listen. Basically this created a lot of curious questions and a lot of laughs. Did you ever get her version? And how did it compare to reality? God, I kind of hope no one I knows reads this. Long story short, he got in a massive fight with a colleague. I was taken to the police station for questioning as I was the only witness to this, or so I thought. That is why I was taken down. Basically the police started questioning me about my own personal safety and they were nervous I was in an abusive relationship. 10 minutes and they took out a restraining order on my behalf and didn't even give me an option. He had only been verbally abusive, but abusive at that. 3 hours of questioning later about our relationship. It was horribly traumatic. Anyway, I called his family that night to explain what happened and how it came about. The next morning they all turned on me and his sister sent that. In this case it was basically out of my hands. There are obviously a few details missing from this, but happy to fill in if anyone has specifics that aren't making sense. My ex-wife told me I could leave my stuff in our house while I found somewhere else to stay. I assumed this was a goodwill effort to keep things as amicable as possible between us. When I went to get my shit, she had burned it all. So that was rough. If you were legally married, judges tend to take a pretty dim view of that kind of behavior. He did. We owned a home together and he gave me the house. He is the judge. She would stalk my Reddit account and angrily text me if she didn't like my posts talking about her cheating on me. I came home from seeing my grandmother on her deathbed and found she had cheated. She also texted me accusing me of sabotaging her attempts to get a job that requires a security clearance. Apparently it was my fault and not the fact she had already been denied a security clearance for mental instability. This was from even I was a kid and my parents were going through a divorce. My dad was a total sociopath. Manipulative. Physically and emotionally abusive. Drug dealing. The whole 9 yards. Even my mom was finally able to get out. He still had visitation rights. His family kept on bugging my sister and me, still under 10 years old, to try to convince my mom to talk to him. She finally did try to talk to him when she came to pick us up at the police station from where it was agreed to meet when he had his time with us. They immediately got into an argument. He started throwing one of his temper tantrum, grabbed my mom in front on a cop from the LAPD trying to beat her. Then the cop grabbed him. He let go of my mom with a look of pure terror on his face. I think that was the day I realized he was sociopathic and didn't want anything else to do with him and his crazy ass Bible thumping family. She removed the retaining clips for my windshield wipers, but put the wipers back on the arms. First storm after I got my car back from her. Driver side wiper flew off the car on Interstate 40. Good times. Kidnapped the kids during their weekend visit and moved to a small town in the next state over. It took me 2 years to get them back. Edit. Wow, this got huge. So everyone doesn't have to read all the comments. I did get them back. She eventually burned all her bridges in the town she moved to and went home to her parents' house. Since her parents were not pleased with her choices and were on my side during the whole deal, they called me to let me know where she was. I went and got them. This was over 20 years ago and they have both grown up just fine. I've since remarried and my second wife has been a wonderful mother to them. It took a lot of work to fix all the damage, but it's mostly okay. The biggest scars that lasted was that my son has a distrust of women with authority that he has worked really hard to get over, and my daughter was afraid to start her own family because she worries she would turn out just like her mom. She finally got over that and is expecting our first grandbaby this fall. When I told my ex-husband I wanted a divorce, the next day after I went to work, he packed our entire house into a U-Haul and put it in storage. Even with the court order, he refused to give my stuff back. I left my marriage with the clothes on my back. Years later he decided he was above the courts because he got away with that and took our son across country telling me he was moving with 1 day notice and told me I couldn't do anything about it. Of course I promptly hired a lawyer and we went back to court and he lost joint custody, but it took a year of fighting, chasing him down, and not seeing my son. There are more stories, but those are probably the worst. When I was going through a really bad breakup, dated 6 years, lived together, my old boss told me a lot about his divorce. They got a house together, furniture, everything. When they got divorced, her idea, she kept custody of the kids. Got the house, furniture, dogs, everything. He told me he walked out with a plastic Safeway bag of clothes and his Godfather DVD trilogy. Because some things you don't leave behind. I think of him every time I watch it now. She called my company, talked her way up the chain to the president of the company. Still don't know how she managed that, but she's smart, and told him I was suicidal and had threatened to do something drastic at work. Later I learned that she thought this would be a roundabout way of getting my address, which I didn't share with her after I moved out because she's batshit crazy. Called me on my birthday 2 years after divorce, offering to make it special, and was quite insistent that I take her up on that opportunity. Was not amused to find out my GF, now wife, had heard the entire conversation on speaker. Good times. Not me, but my grandparents got divorced when my mom was about 17. In their legal battle, they worked out that they would each get 50-50 of the sale of specific shared assets. There was an old junky car and a fairly new RV. My grandpa sold the RV and the car for $1 each. He handed my grandma a buck in court. Called me and pretended he had been hit by a car while we were talking. He even tried to voice the crowd that had gathered around his body. God awful acting, but pretty funny listening to him try to mimic a woman's voice. Points for trying to be inclusive, I guess. I think he was trying to get me to relive my trauma of being on the phone with a friend who actually had been hit by a car while we were talking. Too bad he didn't realize that hearing the real thing is worlds different than hearing a dumbass try to act it out. Edit. I'm so happy that I shared this. Y'all are making me laugh so much. My ex fake jumping from the roof cause I broke up. He was dedicated though. He actually dropped his damn phone and then was mad that I didn't fall for it. While we were still married, she gets pregnant with the guy she was cheating on me with, who is also married to someone else. She has this idea that he's going to leave his wife and they are going to get married. She got a lawyer and filed for divorce. I get a lawyer too. Only thing is that he works for his wife's father, who is setting him up to take over when daddy retires. He realized that getting a divorce means his cushy career is over. Confesses everything to his wife and begs for her forgiveness. His wife takes him back and he cuts off my wife. Seeing that her dreams of living with her BF are over, she claims that I'm the father, which is impossible because by that time we hadn't had sex for more than a year before conception. This does not stop her from telling everyone who will listen that it's my kid. She has her lawyer drop the divorce proceedings. I tell my lawyer to start them with me as the plaintiff and that I want to dispute paternity. I move out. She starts stalking me, shows up at my job and tries to get in. I work as a civilian in Rudd at a military base. The MPs do not take any of her shit and wind up detaining her when she tries to run past the gate. She calls me at work to bail her out or something. I tell her that whatever she's done, it's not my problem and hang up. I also was able to get a restraining order, which she violated repeatedly. She asked for everything, both cars, the entire house and contents, savings, my retirement account, etc. Plus 7 years of spousal support. I offered no support and half of the assets. If she wanted to house, she'd have to buy me out and refinance in her name only when the kid was born. She tried to put my name on the birth certificate anyway, but I'd already successfully disputed paternity, so that didn't go over well. She had to go after Loverboy, who was definitely less than happy to see her. In the end, we split the assets 50-50, sold the house, and she got no spousal support. I don't know if she was able to get money for the kid from Loverboy or not. She called me a few times after the divorce, wanting to get together and talk. The calls were in violation of the restraining order, but I never reported it. About 6 months after the divorce was final, I was offered a new job on the other side of the country. I took it and never told anyone outside of my family where I was going. Almost all of our friends believed her when she claimed the baby was mine and made me out to be the asshole, so I didn't really feel the need to tell them anything. Life is better now. After he realized I was never going back, he told his mom that I had been stealing from the family the whole time we were together. Then he literally put it in writing that I had a key to his parents' home and would sneak in and take his dad's guns and his grandmother's jewelry, and that he had been powerless to stop me. It was always his druggy sister. Always. Anyone with eyes could see it, but no one in the family wanted to believe it. My ex-husband started dating his stepmom, who has been in his life since he was 11 years old. His stepmom and him are still together almost 5 years later. His stepmom confessed her love of my ex to his dad a few years ago, and they have since divorced. The dad is now dating a 21-year-old. I know all of this because I'm still close friends with my ex-husband's sister. It's so messed up, and I'm so grateful I left him when I did. Edit. I can't believe this exploded, haha. Here's the highlights. Won't say where it all unfolded because small towns, but they are all from New Jersey. I'm not. The father and my ex-husband don't speak. Basically everyone in that family except stepmom obviously hates my ex-husband and have cut him mostly out of their lives. It may have been a little grooming, but if you met my ex-husband you'd see he's all around a plotting, manipulative, shitty person, so I think it was the other way around. He constantly talked during our marriage about how hot she was. Pornhub, if you are following. I'd happily play the non-nude narrator to a cinematic universe for the right price. Thanks for all the awards, upvotes, and comments. Makes me feel nice to get that off my chest. Don't marry crazy. Damn. I didn't know Pornhub was setting up their own cinematic universe. Stalked me for 5 years. Would make fake social media profiles to try to follow me, which I would block endlessly, and would try to find where I worked so she could talk to me. This lady cheated on me with 7 different men 2 months after we were married. I kicked her ass to the curb and made her sign the court papers. When we had our day in court, she cried in the judge's office while I just wanted to get this shit done. After, my dad was with me and he threw $50 at her and told her to change your ducking last name. Good guy Pops. I haven't seen or heard from her in about 5 years. Thank goodness. She got custody of our 3 kids. Got 70% of my take-home pay for child support, requiring me to move into the barracks I was in the USAF. Then she immediately moved out of state without telling me, despite the divorce decree requiring my consent, all but guaranteeing I would have no contact with my kids. That's not the crazy part. The crazy part is just a few years later she decided she didn't want to be a mother anymore. So she signed up with a carnival. I think she had the hots for one of the ride operators and left the girls on their own without telling me or the girls beforehand. She called my oldest daughter a few days after leaving to tell her to call me. They hadn't called me before that because they had apparently grown accustomed to their mother disappearing for days at a time. Edit: some have asked what's happened since. This was decades ago. My children are all grown and married with their own children. They all learned after coming to live with me that I wasn't the monster their mother had brainwashed them to believe I was. And they all agreed to be adopted as adults by the light of my life, my wife, whom I would never have met if I hadn't been divorced. Only one of my children has any contact with her mother, mainly because my daughter still lives near where she grew up. That's where her husband and his family live. So that's where she'll stay. The best outcome of all of my children had the best example in the world of how not to be a mother, and consequently all 5 of my grandchildren are having the best childhoods possible.